You're hearing about a man who stood on top of the world and didn't just climb down, he skied it. No bottled oxygen, late season Everest, a line that slices off the summit, rips the Lhotse Face, crosses the Western Coom, and dares the Khumbu Icefall on skis. Some say it shouldn't be possible. Others are arguing about how he pulled it off, and whether every meter was truly on edges. What happened up there wasn't just another record. It rewrote the rules. And the wildest detail, the part no one expected, is what made it work. This isn't a rumor or a misread headline. Andrzej Bargiel stood on the summit of Everest in late September 2025 and pointed his skis straight into the thin air. No bottled oxygen, not a photo op turn and retreat, but a real descent that linked the upper slopes to the Western Coom and kept going. Autumn window, colder temps, fewer teams, harder logistics. He timed it to catch a narrow weather break and move fast while most people were still asking if the snow would even hold. The claim sounds unreal because almost every past attempt fell back on oxygen or stopped short of a full ride. This one didn't. And the big argument people are having now? How he threaded the worst part of the mountain on skis, and whether stopping at Camp 2 overnight changes anything. But the route he chose made this even wilder. Bargiel dropped in from the South Col route, the same line used by most climbers heading up, but almost no one would dare ski it. He carved straight off the summit ridge, slicing down the steep Lhotse Face, then shot into the wide, sunlit Western Coom. That's already risky terrain, but in the autumn season, it's even worse. Colder storms, icier surfaces, and no crowds of Sherpa teams fixing ladders. He wasn't just skiing snow slopes, he was committing to a path where every wrong turn meant exposure over cliffs or crevasses. And while the upper lines looked fast and clean, the lower half of the mountain is where the real nightmare waited, because at the bottom of the Coom sits the most dangerous maze on Everest. Bargiel's push wasn't quick. He spent around 16 hours above 8,000 meters, the so-called death zone, where most climbers can barely breathe, let alone ski. At that altitude, every turn burns energy you don't have, and every pause risks your body shutting down. But he clipped in at the very top, dropped off the summit ridge, and linked his turns down without bottled oxygen. It was a gamble few would even dream of taking, because there's no backup if things go wrong up there. The clock was ticking, the air was razor thin, and daylight was fading, which is why, after hours of descent, he made a call that split opinion right down the middle. He pulled into Camp 2 with fading light and a choice that could make or break the whole mission. Push blindly into the Khumbu Icefall at night, or hold a few hours and live to finish the line. He chose to stop, not to reset the attempt, but to avoid a minefield that shifts by the minute. Purists threw shade, saying a continuous descent should be one push. History says otherwise. Long, committing skis have paused where survival demanded it. What matters is the line, not the nap. He'd already linked summit turns through the Lhotse Face and into the Western Coom without bottled oxygen. The last piece was the most chaotic section of the mountain, an obstacle course of hanging ice, deep slots, and collapsing bridges. Dawn would give him visibility, colder snow, and a chance to read the terrain. Morning came, and with it the most controversial move of the entire descent. At the mouth of the Western Coom, the mountain turns into a scrapyard of moving ice. Towers lean, blocks tilt, and crevasses open without warning. Most teams tiptoe through with ladders and ropes. Bargiel clicked in and read it like a living map. His turns were short, deliberate, and constantly adjusting. Edges set, speed checked, then released just long enough to clear each roll. His brother's drone helped scout from above, marking dead ends and safer ramps so he didn't skate into a trap. That's the part nobody expected, using eyes in the sky to make a clean line through the mess. He stayed on snow wherever there was snow, stepping only where ice turned into bare blue glass, then dropping back onto his skis as soon as the surface returned. By the time the seracs faded and the ground eased, he'd reached the end of snow below the icefall, still under his own power, still without bottled oxygen. It was the ugliest section of the route, and he made it look surgical. That's the how, but the debate that followed was even louder. As clips hit the internet, the first fight wasn't about speed or style. It was oxygen. Most outlets and his own team said he climbed and skied with no oxygen at all. One early headline hinted otherwise and lit up the comments. Here's why that detail matters. At 8,848 meters, bottled gas turns survival math in your favor. Doing the descent without it isn't just harder, it's a different sport. And then there's the split run. Some insisted an overnight at Camp 2 breaks the spell, but Big Mountain Skiing has always judged the line and the method. He linked the summit to the end of snow. Same skis, same season, same push. He just refused to roll the dice in the icefall in the dark. Style hawks can debate wording all week. The footage and the track tell the story, and this wasn't a fluke from a random daredevil. Bargiel didn't pop out of nowhere. He's the guy who skied K2 top to bottom in 2018, something the climbing world had called impossible for decades. That descent was steep, exposed, and violent. But it didn't end with a shifting death maze like the Khumbu Icefall. Everest added a different kind of nightmare. Not just a vertical test, but a moving puzzle of collapsing ice that could shut the door without warning. He stacked lines across the Karakoram and Himalaya, picking windows, turning back when conditions weren't right, and returning when they were. Everest fit the pattern. Patient scouting, multiple seasons, and a team that knows how to move fast when the door opens. Even the drone support wasn't a gimmick. It's how he runs these projects. Cut randomness, keep the risk you must, strip the rest. That's why Everest 2025 wasn't just one bold ride. It was the payoff of years proving these peaks can be skied clean if you wait for the moment. His Hic Sunt Leones project has always aimed at the hardest lines on Earth. Everest was the crown jewel. The descent wasn't luck. It was the next chapter for someone who treats 8,000-meter peaks like long problems to solve, which leads to the last question. Everest just got a new benchmark, a summit-to-base ski with no bottled oxygen in autumn through the icefall on edges. That sets the bar for everyone else, athletes, sponsors, and the audience. Tech will be part of the conversation. Drones, better forecasting, lighter gear. Some call it evolution, others say it bends the spirit. But high places have always absorbed new tools. The real filter is honesty. What you carried, what you skied, what you stepped. Repeatability is the test. Few have the engine, judgment, and nerve to try this without oxygen in that season, with those hazards moving underfoot. Which is exactly why the story won't fade. Because after the headlines, one thing is still hanging in the air. He stood where the world ends and drew a line no one had finished this way before. No oxygen, a clean arc off the summit, a calculated pause, and a surgical exit through the icefall. It wasn't just a tick, it reset what a complete Everest descent can look like. So now the question lands on everyone watching. Does smart strategy and new tech make a feat more legit or less? Drop your take, because the next person who tries to match this will have to answer it on the mountain.